Buenos días. Me llamo María del Carmen Teresa Arcocha y López de Blanco y nací en Havana, Cuba. And I am living proof that sometimes when it comes to diversity, what you see is not necessarily what you're going to get. I just shared with you my full name. María del Carmen was my given name, and I actually disliked it so much that you might notice in my bio that I just got rid of that completely and just went with my maiden name, Arcocha, which was my father's name. López was my mother's name, and in the Latin communities, we use both of them. So Arcocha y López means Arcocha and López. And then I married a man named Bill White. That's the Blanco part at the end. In Spanish, some of you may know, Blanco is white. I am delighted to be with you here today and to share with you in this very special experience that you're having to celebrate your successes over the past year. I was very honored to sit back in the group last night and to be able to share in some of the excitement of all of the awards that were received. And I'm here today to talk with you about a subject called emotional intelligence. Now, I know that some of you are familiar with the term emotional intelligence, or EQ, as it's been called, because Daniel Goleman, a pretty well-known researcher and Harvard Business Review and Harvard Business professor, actually wrote a book back in 1990 about emotional intelligence. And what he said was that in a study of over 100 leaders of organizations, prior to this study, what the thought had been was that it was actually IQ, or intelligence quotient, that determined whether or not someone was a good leader or was the best leader. And what his studying found was that actually it is not IQ, but rather this elusive concept called EQ that is a better determinant of someone else's leadership abilities. So you're all in this room today because you have all been identified by your organizations as either leaders today or potential leaders. It's actually emotional intelligence and not IQ that are best determinants of leaders. Now, all of you in the room today are here because your organizations have selected you as either already being leaders in your organization or having the potential to be leaders within your organization. And so part of what my job here today with you is to help you understand how you become a leader for all people. Because one of the things that we know to be true is that in today's environment, in order to be a strong leader, you can't just lead one kind of person. You need to be able to lead everyone in your organization. And with as diverse of an organization as we now have, it becomes a little bit more difficult to be that wonderful leader. So what I'd like you to do is, if you will, turn with me to page number 13 in your book. And on that page, you're going to see a model that looks somewhat like this. I will tell you I'm not the world's best artist. And so my little scribbles here are definitely not as nice looking as what you see on the page there. But what I'd like you to do is I'd like to have you walk with me through an understanding of what emotional intelligence is and where it comes from. And by the way, you may have heard from some folks in some studies that emotional intelligence is something that is born inside of you, that you were either born a leader or you weren't. And what I'm here to tell you today is that in my over 30 years of working in leadership development, in team building, inclusion, coaching, et cetera, I disagree with that 100%. There may be some inherent components to emotional intelligence, but I also know for a fact that emotional intelligence can be learned, and it's a practice. And if you're committed to being a better leader, I guarantee you that by understanding emotional intelligence and putting yourself in situations to build emotional intelligence, you will grow as a leader and you will improve your ability to influence others effectively. Okay? So what this model says is that there's basically two basic components of emotional intelligence. If you look at your book, what it tells you is at the top is a component called awareness. Now, I've listed it here as I know, okay? So in other words, awareness is in your head. Okay, this is what I know to be true. The second component is actions or behaviors, and I call that I do. Okay, and no, it's not that I'm taking my wedding vows. It is that I understand that it's what I do, okay, that creates an impact on other people. What I know causes me to do, but what I do is the final impactor on others, okay? Then there's two other pieces at the top. There's myself here, and then there's others here, okay? What we do is we take each one of these squares, and each component is labeled. So up here we have self-awareness. In other words, knowing myself is about self-awareness, okay? Other awareness is called social awareness. Doing, okay, the action part of myself is called self-management or self-regulation. You might have seen that before, right? And then the last piece is social skills. But you also may notice that in the center there's this huge circle. And in that circle is a word called empathy, okay? Empathy is the core of emotional intelligence. Now I'm going to ask you to help me here, okay? There's a difference between the concept that we call empathy and the concept that we call sympathy. And sometimes we get those two mixed up. So help me here, okay? How would you define sympathy? Anybody? Feeling sorry for someone, okay? Yes. So the element there is kind of pity, right? Okay. How would you describe or define empathy? Relating to. Yes. What else? Emotional identification. Understanding, right? Connecting with. So if I were to ask you which one of those words has a one up, one down component as opposed to an equality component, which is it? Sympathy, right? So if I feel sympathy for someone, I feel sympathy or pity for someone that's in the lower place, which is what we were talking about earlier, right? Okay. But when I feel empathy for someone, what I feel is connected to them, okay? And the way that I develop my empathy is to connect with as many different people and as many different experiences as possible. Now, do you think it's possible to literally be able to understand and have every experience that there is to have that all human beings on this earth have? No. Okay, I mean, I wish there were that much time. Some of us that like to experience a lot of things, that would be great, but the reality is we can't, okay? Is it possible to have empathy for everyone? Yes, it absolutely is, okay? Because empathy is a skill. It's something you can learn, okay? And in here, that's going to be part of what we're going to talk about, is how do you go about developing empathy, okay? So now let's summarize what we've been talking about, okay? In a couple of short phrases that are easily remembered and that you can take with you now as you move forward and interact as leaders. The first is, you can't manage. I can't manage what I don't know, okay? So in order for me to be able to be self-aware, I must know myself. And that's a fundamental component of emotional intelligence. So if you were to ask me, what one thing do I need to do to become better at leading people? I would say, spend time on introspection and make sure that you know yourself. The second thing that I'll reinforce is that, remember we talked about how all of these lead into the other? Well, the bottom line is that all of these lead into what our impact is. And the impact is so much more important than our intent. So if you were to say, what else do I need to do to make myself more emotionally intelligent? Start asking people, how do I impact you? And then listen openly for their response, for them to tell you, Maria, you talk too fast. And when you talk too fast, I can't understand you. And I don't know what to do. When I get feedback like that, then I say, you know what? My intention, what I want to do is to say, but my intention is that I get excited and I want to communicate with excitement. Instead, what I say is, thank you. I need to hear that, and I'm working on slowing down, okay? Because I know that that matters to you. And as your impact and intent match up more and more as leaders, you'll have more positive results. And that's what we're going for, right? Thank you so much for your attention today. I appreciate it.